There are a lot of big things on the horizon for the Final Fantasy franchise, some of which we can only speculate and even guess as to what might be coming. Naoki Hamaguchi, the director of Rebirth and the upcoming Part 3, had some things to say about what he could be working on in the future, a pretty vague statement about what he'll be producing going forward. And for a director, a game developer like Naoki Hamaguchi, who's been working on these games for over a decade at this point, I think it's really good to hear that he's finally getting to spread his wings in other projects, finally putting that talent to use in something other than 7. Even though I love 7, it's really exciting to think about the prospect of something completely new. He also chimes in on what he would do with the combat system of these games once the trilogy's over, whether that be with these games that he may be producing or with any future Final Fantasy game. Lots of really interesting things to think about, so as always, let's just get right into it. Now, this interview comes from RPG Site with Hamaguchi answering, quote, "I'm currently producing several game titles, some of which are not released or announced yet. I also handle game direction for series like FF7. So again, super vague, but his answer also opens up a whole bunch of possibilities as to what these games that he's producing may be. I mean, there are so many possibilities from the heavily rumored Final Fantasy IX remake that a lot of people have kind of been losing hope that it's even a real project at this point, or that maybe it got canned in development. We've talked about this on the channel so many times at this point, but I think that 9 remake is not only real, but I believe it is still in development and something that is still coming. Again, when you look at Square Enix as a company, what's going on internally, their company restructuring, their 3-year reboot plan that has probably set back a lot of things in development, it's possible that that game could have been canned, but it's equally as possible that that game is still in development and they're waiting for the right time to reveal it. Of course, Final Fantasy Tactics, the Evilise Chronicles just released, and they definitely do not want to reveal anything big right next to that game, especially not something as big and completely new like another remake, right? Especially when you also have Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 also on the horizon, something that is coming out in the next couple of years. And feel free to let me know if I'm wrong, but I don't see Square Enix waiting that much longer, like years after Part 3, to develop another remake, right? And that's assuming they don't already have another remake cooking in the background. And I know a lot of people have issues with remakes, and especially now with so much of the industry so obsessed with remakes and remasters, I completely understand where a lot of the fatigue is coming from. But when a remake is done right and is released within a consistent pipeline, both remakes and new games, I mean, how do you complain about that? You get the best of both worlds, both nostalgia reimagined, and if it's done right, it is a feeling like no other. Get completely new games that can balance that out, create a consistent stream of content that can garner hype and sell. So I think the possibility of Naoki Hamaguchi producing some type of remake in the series, like say the 9 remake that has been heavily rumored for so many years, I wouldn't count it out, especially considering that a while ago rumors had circulated around that 9 remake project had originally been outsourced before being brought back in-house. Or it could be a completely different studio. Maybe Yoko Taro would like to give the franchise a spin. But if you were to ask me, what are these multiple projects that Hamaguchi is producing? I think I'm very confident in saying that one of those projects could very well be Final Fantasy XVII. And when you think about it, it just makes a lot of sense. Coming off the cusp of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, this fresh director who has done really good things for the re-trilogy thus far, it's no surprise that Square Enix would bring him on to a new project. Someone who's young and can obviously lead a game to where it needs to be. He's also someone who is different, which is a very prominent practice for Final Fantasy. You usually don't see the same studio, the same people working on a Final Fantasy for 2 games straight. It's almost exclusively been a constant rotation. Just look at Final Fantasy XVI and how Yoshi P and Creative Studio 3 were brought on because of their work on Final Fantasy XIV and its incredible expansions. And again, it makes a lot of sense for Hamaguchi to be producing Final Fantasy XVII, because if we look back at 16, Yoshi P was only producing that game. He wasn't directing it, and even if he wanted to, he couldn't because he was directing and producing Final Fantasy XIV at the time, and to be fair, still is. And so history could repeat itself because Naoki Hamaguchi is still working on the remake trilogy. He's still hard at work on directing the last entry in one of the most important video game remakes in history. So it's no question that if he was the one working on 17, as well as Creative Studio 1, then he would not be the one directing it. Instead, it would be someone completely different from the studio, someone obviously of the skill set and the experience. But this is assuming that he's talking about solely Final Fantasy projects, even though we know it could be anything. And that would be cool. I would love to see these directors, these producers like Naoki Hamaguchi or Yoshi P work on something new, a game that they can call their own. I mean, I think it would be cool to see Square Enix go for a brand new IP that's an action game, right? I mean, they have Ryota Suzuki there working at Square Enix after Final Fantasy 16, so why not use his talent? Why not put him to work on a brand new action game? But to have one of these trusted directors, producers like Naoki Hamaguchi or Yoshi P head a new IP, that is all I want. That is all I've been asking for, man. I mean, they've worked on Final Fantasy. We've seen what they can do in this franchise, but to be able to see what they can create beyond the confines of Final Fantasy, beyond the expectations, beyond the preconceived notions of what should or shouldn't be in a game, what Final Fantasy is or isn't supposed to be, I believe it would just be so interesting to see what they can do in something completely new. But whether Hamaguchi is working on something like Final Fantasy, whether it be Final Fantasy 9 Remake or 17, I hope my guesses are right, because if it's anybody to be able to lead their own game away from the confines of simply Final Fantasy 7, then I hope that it is none other than Hamaguchi himself. Now, there was also a recent interview by Easy Allies where Hamaguchi talks about the remake battle system and his plans for it in the future of Final Fantasy for a future Final Fantasy game. Take a look.
Since you put so much work into this battle system, do you think that you would use it again for either another Final Fantasy or another RPG, or would you want to challenge yourself to come up with something different once again?
So, you know, I don't know what kind of project I would be working on after the FF7 Remake project, but at this point in time, I don't think I will use like the exact same battle system. You know, in order to keep it fresh, you want to keep it surprising for our players, but I think it is very possible for me to kind of take the FF7 Remake battle system as a basis, you know, have something, you know, that derives from that as an evolution. I think there is a possibility to use something like that, but I don't think I will use the exact same format.
And this is the exact answer I have been looking for, the exact same thing I have been saying in most of my Final Fantasy videos. Like, if a future game wanted to take from an existing combat system like the remake battle system, I don't want an exact one-to-one copy. I don't just want the same combat over and over again. Yeah, it's okay to adopt an existing battle system, but I want to see some iteration. I also want to see some completely new things that we've never seen in these games before. Something that the series has been so comfortable with, creating something new, some innovation. You know, give us some interesting, intricate, and dynamic mechanic systems, something that a lot of the Final Fantasy games are known for. I want to see those type of deep and dynamic systems done right again in 17. But Hamaguchi's answer here kind of goes back to yet another interview where he talks about how Part 3's gameplay isn't going to be the exact same style as Rebirth, that they're going to further evolve it and change it into yet another different and fresh experience. And this was a part of the interview, this answer, that got blown way out of proportion by fans, to where people believed that he was talking about solely the battle system and how the battle system was going to be completely different from Remake and Rebirth, which is far from the truth. I mean, he also never said specifically the battle system, he said the gameplay. And the gameplay of the Remake trilogy has consistently evolved and changed from Remake being a more linear game to then Rebirth, you know, taking that completely further and making an open world game. He's just saying that Part 3 is going to do the exact same thing. It's going to evolve and change how the gameplay progresses addresses the specific game design that we'll see for part 3 in comparison to Rebirth and Remake. That's all he's really saying. And of course, Twitter took that answer of evolving part 3's gameplay from Rebirth as completely changing the battle system of the Remake trilogy, which obviously isn't the case, and it also wouldn't make sense to just throw away that consistency. Like, you're gonna have a hybrid system for the first 2 games of the Remake trilogy, but then change it up on the last entry. I just don't see how that makes any sense. But that is Twitter for you. Anyways, let me know what you all think about this down below. What do you predict that these multiple projects that Naoki Hamaguchi is producing could be? Are they Final Fantasy related? Are they not? Could it be a spin-off or a remake? Or maybe it's the big Final Fantasy 17 itself? Definitely let me know all of that and more down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one.